of service and bringing together our civilian and military communities. Brought to you by Fairway Independent Mortgage and Lone Star Wealth Strategies. Don't worry, retire happy and work with us. Hey, good day. This is Jim Blythe, U.S. Navy veteran. Today, we've got an exceptional program. I've got my brother, Chuck Wright, here, Marine Corps helicopter pilot, and joining us, Col Baron Lukas, Marine Corps pilot. I mean, I'm surrounded by flying Marines, low and slow and fast and gas.
Good morning, guys.
Morning, Baron. How are you doing, sir?
Much better than I should be, I think, at this point.
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
There we go.
You were introduced to me by my good friend Tim Snyder, and one of the things he said, and you can attribute this to him, he said, when you meet Baron Lukas, you're going to know he was a Marine. He looks like a Marine. He talks like a Marine. He acts like a Marine.
And he's got a Hollywood porn star name. I mean, this is awesome.
Don't tell my wife that, please.
Okay, silliness over. Would you give us very quickly your 30-second, 60-second elevator speech, what exactly you do now and how you're doing it, and then we're going to kind of work backwards into your Marine Corps career and how that transition went.
Absolutely. Right now, I am with a company called ExecHQ, which is a consulting and advisory firm out of Phoenix. There's about 100 of us, what I call graybeards, meaning people that have been in the C-suite in business for at least 2 to 3 decades. So not young MBAs, but people that have been there and done that at the C level. And we consult in a number of various ways in lower middle market companies to improve profitability, act as fractional or interim C-suite members. And what I do particularly is I help companies prepare for an exit by increasing the valuation of the company to a program called ExecHQ Multiple.
Very nice. And so quick question, we'll jump over to economics. I kind of peeked on the last line there.
Sure.
What are you seeing today? What is the mood in the economy as you're out talking? I mean, talk about boots on the ground, tip of the spear type of stuff. You're talking to the guys.
There's still, Chuck, sorry, there's still a lot of money on the sidelines. So there's lots of money that needs to be put to use. And there are a lot of companies looking to be sold. I'll give you an example. The baby boomer generation, so our generation, so if you were born 46 to 64, that time frame, 58 to about 76, greatest wealth generators in human history are now looking to exit. So there's lots of companies trying to be sold. Of course, the inflation, we are definitely in a recession, no matter what the news says, is taking a bite out of that. You see the stock market not doing so well. But by and large, there's still appetite for transactions out there. Business is not going badly. I've got a number of clients that are doing quite well. They're going to exit correctly before long.
Well, this strategy of the kind of work you do not only translates to the owner and the seller of the company, but to the buyer, because they're going to have a cleaned up company. They're going to have an opportunity to continue the success and then make it grow. Been on the sidelines.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know, when I was in commercial real estate and saw many of these transactions, and many times when they weren't prepared, that buyer didn't do so well and things went south. When they were extremely well prepared, that buyer came in and was able to bring additional capital, was able to bring additional growth, and was able to bring additional expertise and technology, made all the difference in the world in the success of that company and the people that stayed with it.
Yeah, the sad news is, Jim, that only 30% at most of companies that want to be sold have a successful transaction, meaning that all parties were happy and the owners of the company received the valuation and the transaction funds that they were looking for. 30% is not a high percentage if you're looking to be sold. And so what ExecHQ Multiple does is we go in nominally 9 to 18 months before the transaction and fix that company from A to Z. everything from financial reporting to planning, execution, leadership, governance, all the things that if I were a buyer, I would not pay for if it were broke. We fix before they go to get sold. And we have a client right now that's just going to market, and for the last 7 months, we worked to remove all those risks from that company. And now buyers look at a clean company that they can buy without any problems. It's like selling a car that's completely pristine and has been worked over, and it's now better than it was when it was new. Same thing happens to businesses.
Baron, one of the things that I'm curious about, because I've seen this as well, is where employees put together, or the owner of the company puts together a deal where you've got an ESOP that enables the employees to, in fact, take over or buy the company and continue operating. Do you run into that very often?
I have not yet, but we have a company right now that is thinking about an ESOP. It's a company that's in California, about a $480 million revenue company, so it's a sizable company.
Wow.
And the owners want to do something different. And so an ESOP is a potential for that company.
And so for our listeners who are not quite as plugged in, military guys, business guys, we've all got our crazy acronyms. ESOP is an employee stock option plan, where basically the employees take the control of the company. And another variation of that is a key employee group, creating a key employee group to called a keg, and the idea is the keg winds up buying the company, because often you'll have employees of a company, key employees, and the people that you work with, and it's kind of where my mind's going right now. So I'm already into my next couple of questions, but the point being is you may have 2, 3, 4, 5 individuals that have been with the company for a while that are critical to its success and its operation, and they don't want a new boss. They want to take over for the old boss. So there are a lot of ways to skin the cat, as they say, and that's kind of where we were going with what you are doing. It's why I wanted to kind of start talking about the nature of the market from 30,000 feet, which is something I never saw in a helicopter. But as we slowly get it down, and the comment about the tip of the spear, and Baron and I were both Marines, and it is a common, popular way of referencing what we do. We were people that literally were at the tip of the spear when you deployed, when I deployed. I mean, that's what we were doing. I actually thought we were going to go wind up invading Beirut back in the day. Lost my roommate there. Sorry, I, for some reason, triggered over. I'm wearing the 10th anniversary Carry the Load shirt, where we make sure we don't forget those
Yes, sir.
green side, blue side, red side people that we've lost in the line of duty. So sorry, going off of my personal rant there, but to bring this back, that's what you're doing right now. You're very much at the tip of the spear in the business community. You've got a fascinating resume. I was reading your LinkedIn page. You made a comment in there when you were listing, and we talked a little bit about ESOPs, things of that nature. But you also made a comment about leadership. And would you talk for a minute some of the observations you have about leadership in the business community? Because it's amazing to me how many people don't think about how important that is. And sorry, my question is going way too long. But talk about leadership.
Fine. You're fine. Yeah, absolutely. And this is not derogatory to the business world at all. It's just my observation is that real leadership, and I'm not talking about fads or the latest buzzword, I'm talking about real leadership, where you care for your people, but you don't carry them. You remember the old Marine Corps thing, Chuck? It's mission first, people always.
Right.
Real servant leadership is not necessarily taught at an MBA school. And it's not taught in high school. It's not taught in college necessarily. So for people to become leaders in the civilian world takes some doing. For folks that have served in the military, and I'll be a little bit unashamedly pejorative, the Marine Corps has a really good leadership program, from officer candidate school to the basic school to varying levels of seniority and then command. the thing that probably the greatest lesson, other than knowing who I am now, which is a gift that the military gives you, is that it teaches you leadership. And the civilian world needs leadership. That's one of the things that I do for all of my clients, is that I do executive coaching and bring leadership into the program. It isn't just about profitability. It's about really developing the kind of culture you want in a company. And now it's not the Marine Corps, but culture, core values, how you look at your workforce and how they look at you as a leader. Developing leaders in your workforce is all absolutely critical. It's not often taught to the civilian sector.
That is so rampant in the business world. Having been in commercial real estate many years ago, and what I did, I saw guys who were brilliant at putting a deal together, brilliant at getting things done, but when it came to personal management, they were terrible, and they left a trail of tears behind them. I've seen it with other companies. The entrepreneur who's got the great idea and the drive and the stick-to-itiveness builds a great company, only to be just constantly disruptive. And we see that all the time. So leadership is so important. One of the things that I also wanted to make a point, and a friend of mine, Woody Beal, said to me, one of the problems with the Russian military and some of the other militaries is they don't develop the leadership infrastructure of their enlisted. That you either have an officer or you have a low, uncapable enlisted man without leadership in between. Because he said to me, who runs the Navy? The chief petty officers. Who runs the Marine Corps? You know, your senior NCOs.
Yeah, your staff sergeants and your gunnery sergeants.
So it's not just about the officer corps and the leadership. The point I want to make is, for any young man or woman looking at the military, the leader, even in enlisted ranks, the leadership lessons are amazing, and what the opportunities you have as a young man or woman are incredible. Speaking of that, I kind of like to back up and talk about the flying career and get that.
Well, that's not back. We're going backwards. We're getting there. We'll start with the business part first. It's Jim finally got his pilot's license, and he's all about flying, baby. And we'll get off on that tangent, and we'll never get him back. We're going to get there because Baron has had an incredible career, kind of done a little bit of everything. But the one thing, and we kind of touched on it there, and I was going to say, it's not just the leadership training in the officers. And I wanted to kind of finish this point. When we first started this show years ago, we were really, and I think we've done a pretty good job in DFW, and I say we, not like Jim and I were responsible for all of it, but the community. And many people don't realize we have a major reserve base here in Dallas, but for the most part, DFW, when I say Dallas, I mean DFW. But for the most part, we don't really have a big military presence, and yet Region 8, which is the DFW region of Texas, has the largest concentration of veterans in the state. And people don't realize that. But for a long time, and I think a lot of employers are coming around to it, and the point that I wanted to make, it's not just the officers, what Jim was saying, and it is a major difference between the Russian army, which we're seeing completely falling apart, and they're unmotivated, and that's all lack of leadership. But in the U.S. military and the British militaries and most of the Western militaries, they're built around this concept that the chiefs and the staff sergeants and gunnery sergeants and senior master sergeants run things. And so we're going to be about a minute from taking our break. But that'll allow me to finish this point. Yeah, maybe I can get it done in a minute. But the point that I want to drive at, the training that we have, I remember before my first deployment, the CO telling me, I was a training officer, as my other duty besides flying, and he said, I want every Marine to come off this float having completed the Marine Corps correspondence NCO course. And we got that done, and it was one of my big pluses on my fitness report. But it really got me thinking about it, and I am the son of an Air Force brat, so I am an Air Force brat. I'm the son of an enlisted man, is what I was going to say, senior master sergeant in the Air Force. But I understood that early on.
All right, we're going to be right back after these words from all of our partners. Stay with us on Facebook.
Wow, you nailed that
Good
one.
discussion, guys.
Some great hand signs over there from Diane.
Yeah.
Sorry, we screw around Facebook, and the Facebook people know that when we come off our commercial breaks.
It's good. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the Russians, Chuck. I spent 3 years in Europe in a kind of intelligence role, most of the time in the former Soviet Union. So I've got lots of experience with the Russians and Ukrainians, and it's interesting that they're on their own NCOs. There's this conscripts and officers, and most of the officers are corrupt, and the conscripts don't want to be there. Which is what you're seeing now.
That's what Woody Beale told me, and that absolutely amazed me. I did not know that. One of the other things, we do these national security briefings about 4 times a year that Navy League and Air Force and Marine Corps League put on. And one of the men was talking that he was I believe he was an Air Force fighter jock. He was a 4-star. And he was invited by his Russian counterpart to fly one of the MiGs. And he said from a distance, the plane looked great. But when he got up close, you could tell it hadn't been. No, he said, I was beginning to get real concerned about just getting in the damn thing. And, you know, what we're seeing is so indicative of what those guys were saying. I think that's an amazing testamentary to our leadership, especially. I will say this to you guys: the Navy and the Marine Corps leads the military as far as education and leadership, in my opinion. Now, I'm Navy.
I think so.
But I watched you guys. I've known many Marines, and it is amazing the difference between that, and I'm not slighting my Army or Coast Guard or other guys, Air Force, but there's a big difference in the discipline, the leadership. You don't have the same kind of thing, I think, to the level that they do in the Navy and the Marine Corps.
Yeah, I think the difference is that the Navy and Marine Corps is always up front. Being at sea is being in combat. People get killed at sea all the time. And obviously in the Marine Corps, nobody in the Marine Corps is in the rear. Every Marine is a rifleman. So the combat ethos, the war ethos is probably at the forefront of the Marine Corps. The Marine Corps is more like special forces. They're always on duty. They're always ready to go. And the only way we can get there is with the Navy. So it's a good team.
And that's, Baron, one of the comments, and I want to tag on to what Jim was just saying. And by the way, I've been reminded that we're using our acronyms again. NCO is a non-commissioned officer. So we were referring, that's a reference to the enlisted pay grades, and you're kind of a knuckle dragging grunt until you get to be about a corporal, and then in the Marine Corps. So that's an E3. Or an E4. Yeah, that's right, E4. I screwed that up. Anyway, the point being is that's when you start taking on a little bit of responsibility. But these young men have this incredible responsibility. We were talking about the Army. I've got a friend of mine's son who's 5 years out of college right now who commands a multi-million-dollar Bradley fighting vehicle. He runs a team, and you talk about him, and it's like, why would I, in touch with an employer, you say, well, I don't want to hire that guy. Because this is a guy who knows how to work with people. This is a guy who knows how to get a job done. And this is a guy who's not going to come to you every 5 minutes and ask, how do I do this? He's just going to figure it out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
We're about to break back into...
Welcome back to the Veterans Impact Show, and thanks to our sponsors, Fairway Independent Mortgage and Lone Star Wealth Strategies. Now, let's continue this great conversation. Boy, I got to tell you, I just almost can't get a word in edgewise. 2 Marines, you guys are having fun.
You got 2 Marines here. You got nothing to say, son.
Boy, I just sit back and marvel. I tell you what, we were talking on the break about leadership in the Marine Corps and the discipline in the Marine Corps. I think without a doubt, anybody in the world would say the Marine Corps is heads and shoulders when it comes to discipline and drive and getting the job done. No doubt about it.
And we love the adulation. I'd agree with that, but I really do think it is a different culture in the military, and it's kind of where I was kind of backing into. As I talked about backing into, I was going, through Baron's initial litany of what he does, and you talked about the culture of a company, and we talk a lot about culture right now, and it's almost created a little bit of a negative connotation, but it is a culture, and the military always has been, and it has always been an incredibly inclusive culture, generally speaking. You can point to examples, and we're not perfect, but I really think this is across the board. You talked about our coasties, and I didn't get to tell our Douglas Munro story. Douglas Munro is the only coastie who's ever earned the Medal of Honor. Great story, earned it on Guadalcanal. And I didn't realize this at the time, but that initial write-up came from Chesty Puller, who is the legendary Marine of all Marine. I only learned that recently, but the point that I'm making is I think about a petty officer who is commanding a boat in the kind, I don't know what the Navy calls, what the Coast Guard calls them. Cutter. I call them boats because it pisses the Navy off. Well, he wouldn't be commanding something as large as a cutter, but he would have incredible responsibility on a cutter. And then they've got all kinds of, they do a lot of small boat operations, and I won't go into that whole story, but the point I'm making is you talked about culture and tie that into leadership. You go into companies, I'm sure, all the time, and you see a culture, you can walk in the door and go, okay, they've got a problem.
Yeah. My program, which I developed over the last 15 years, comes from what I learned in the Marine Corps, what I learned teaching at the Air War College. But it's also always starts with the leadership issues. Right? It's who you are as an organization. What's your why is one of the questions that is now asked, and why are you doing what you're doing? And at the very top, at the command level, at the CEO level, there's two jobs. Right? The first one is to set the vision for the company. What are we really here for to do, and how are we going to do it? And then the second part is setting the culture, and the culture needs to be based on integrity and character and honesty, first of all. And a good friend of mine wrote a book on leadership, and he talks about character, composure, and competence being the three top things for leaders. That needs to be translated to your workforce and at all leadership levels in the company. If you don't have a good culture, then you don't hire the right people. If you don't hire the right people, then you can't get anything done. And so one of the things I learned is that if you have the right culture and the right leadership, a organization, whether it's in the military or in civilian life, becomes self-cleansing. The people that don't belong there leave because they get uncomfortable with a culture that is demanding, that is honest, that has integrity, that has purpose, and the bad apples go away.
Without a doubt. Now, can we go back and talk about your flying career in the Marine Corps?
Jim is dying to get onto this. I was going to do that once we hit the 10 o'clock hour, but let's talk a little bit about, so as we continue to walk backwards from today to your career, how did you get with this company? And if you go and you find Baron's LinkedIn page, some of this will make a lot of sense. It is very obvious that you have a lot of training from the military to do what you do. But how did you find your way to this company? How did that happen? Talk a little bit about your transition.
Very, very long story, obviously. 27 years as a commissioned officer, commanded at the lieutenant colonel level, commanded at the colonel level. Flew a number of airplanes, starting with Air Force, A-Force as an adversary instructor. Back in the Cold War, we had airplanes that looked and flew like MiGs, and so we trained against that platform. And then when I retired, because my back and neck were not doing so well, I joined an investment bank here in Fort Worth, because Fort Worth is the best place for military retirees to be. And so, I'm sorry.
Baron, we're going to have to take a break for our terrestrial radio. And so we're going to be right back in just a minute with Baron Lukas. We're talking about leadership. We're going to be talking about being a pilot in the Marine Corps and some of the exciting things that he has done with that. A whole world unto itself. This is the Veterans Impact Show.
nailing it today.
Well done, Jim. That was lovely. nice hand signal.
Yeah, I'm sure our Facebook audience is going, what is he doing?
Well, Baron, I've only been doing radio since I was 16. I did.
So you started last week, huh? Good for you.
Yeah, well, not quite.
Fast learner.
Baron just got back on the Christmas card list.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting because when I went aboard the Oriskany on my first deployment, my first cruise.
Now you are dating yourself, Jim.
Pardon?
Now you are dating yourself.
Oh, yeah. That's why I like doing the show with Jim, because I don't have to worry about being the old
I'm
guy.
older than both of you guys. But I got to tell you, I was doing Armed Forces radio as a volunteer in my off hours, and I got handed a piece of paper that said, would you please announce that Lieutenant Commander McCain had been shot down? And he was one of my pilots out of my squadron. And that was one of the toughest moments in radio I've ever had.
I bet you that's tough news.
Mm-hmm.
So let's pick up where you were. And I'm fascinated by this because, believe it or not, if my wife and I have talked about it, we got married literally 20 years ago last month. She moved down here to Texas. But if we had to do it over again, the two places we would look at, if we stayed in DFW area, would be Lovejoy, which is out just east of Allen, for those that know the DFW area. The other one is Fort Worth. So you made the comment, Fort Worth is the best city for military retirees. Talk about that a little bit. We're going to do a little infomercial for the Fort Worth Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, I had the Marine Aircraft Group 41, which is at the Naval Air Station Joint Reserve Base, Fort Worth, and F-18s and C-130s and some other commands. And for those 2 lovely years, I was a senior Marine in Texas, which doesn't mean much other than it's a line of my resume, but it allowed me to do a lot of public speaking. And Fort Worth, and as you said earlier, the entire DFW area, to draw a circle around it, is the biggest recruiting area for the Marine Corps. There are more Marine Corps stickers on here than you can shake a stick at. And so, to me, it was an obvious choice when I made the decision to retire because I couldn't fly anymore and I couldn't run anymore and I couldn't do anything anymore. That was fun. I had the contacts and the culture of Fort Worth appeals to me. I mean, right now I'm talking to you from a ranch just south of Mineral Wells, so I am into Texas, right?
Wow.
I have a hat, but I also have cows, so it's not all hat, no cattle for me.
Baron, that is a lot of people don't know Mineral Wells, Weatherford, all of that is kind of almost a hill country. It's very, very pretty out there.
Very pretty.
And I understand that they are completely rehabbing that old hotel that was
the Baker Hotel. Absolutely, yeah. It's under contract. The funding is there, and they've made some really good progress. All the windows are now back and lights on, and
very
3
cool.
or 4 years from now, it's going to be a destination place, I think.
Oh, it was back in the 1900s, early 1900s.
1920s and 30s. That Baker Hotel was the place to go for mineral baths, healing water.
Mineral Wells got its name. For our listeners that don't know the Mineral Wells story, it got its name literally from the mineral waters. And this was this beautiful Art Deco hotel, and I've been driving by it on and off. I went out to a Confederate air show. We're almost at a break. I'll finish the rest of that story later.
Stay with us, Facebook.
Facebook, we're going to be back on the other side. I'm okay.
Welcome back. This is the Veterans Impact Show, and thanks to our great sponsors, Fairway Independent Mortgage and Lone Star Wealth Strategies. Now, let's continue this conversation. Well, I've got two great Marines. One of them was fly high, and the other one fly low. I guess that would be the way to put it. Chuck, I got to tell you, this is a great conversation with Baron Lukas. Again, we want to talk about Colonel Baron Lukas, his past as well as his future. The future sounds exciting for what you're doing with ExecHQ. So let's talk about what motivated you. You were talking about you were in college in a JROTC program for the Navy. You went into the Marine Corps. What did you do in the Marine Corps? What did you get to do?
Well, I'm an immigrant from Germany and immigrated here in '68. In '69, we landed on the moon. When I saw that, I said, I want to be a fighter pilot. My father was a coal miner in Germany. He thought I was crazy. So I did not know much about the Marine Corps other than watching John Wayne movies, which I thought were very heroic. And I didn't think that I was cut out for that heroic stuff. So I received a Navy ROTC scholarship, went to a small school in Florida. And when I got there, it was obvious to them, not to me, that I was cut out to be a Marine. I was too mean, too ugly, and too physical to be a sailor, I'm afraid. So I chose the Marine Corps. And since I wanted to fly, I studied everything that I could about the Marine Corps aviation, back from Guadalcanal and Patriot Boys in World War II and the whole bit. And so I received my commission and received an air contract. Went to flight school. I was lucky enough to be selected for F-4s, which is a wonderful airplane. I flew F-4s for a little bit, and then A-4s as an adversary instructor. Got a chance early on as a brand new captain to go to the Naval Fighter Weapons School, Top Gun, in late '85, early '86. And then from there, did a lot of flying as an instructor. Flew the F-18s. Then after that, forever, about 3,000 hours in the F-18. Went to combat in the F-18 in Desert Storm. It was a great career. From there, school in command and staff, a major. Then to Europe for 3 years doing some intelligence work in the former Soviet Union and other places. And back home to command as lieutenant colonel. And then back to school for the Air War College as a student, then as a professor. And then lo and behold, very, very surprised, I was selected for command as a colonel and came to Fort Worth, Texas to command Marine Aircraft Group 41. It's a great 27 years.
So Marine Air Group 41, which is, as you said, over at the Joint Reserve Base in Fort Worth, is the reserve Marine Air Group that has both F-18s, had F-4s for the longest time, but had transitioned to F-18s. In fact, it was the last unit to have F-4s in the Marine Corps, but it also has C-130s. So you got a little bit of time and everything. So, quick question: the obvious path for most people is to go to the airlines. You chose to go to business. Talk about that a little bit as you were making your transition.
Sure. Well, if you remember, 2001, I was a lieutenant colonel commander in Yuma, Arizona, and I came home from playing with my MPs. I had the support squadron there, so I owned everything that ran the base. And I was playing with the MP guard dogs. I trained protection dogs as a hobby. Came back and saw the impact of the second airplane into the World Trade Center, and my plans to be an airline pilot vanished in that second. And which is good, because I really didn't want to fly the airlines anyway. That seemed a little bit boring. No offense to my friends who are airline pilots, but that wasn't for me. So when I retired as a colonel, I was a senior Marine in Texas for 2 years, and I had a fair amount of contacts, and was lucky enough to be hired by a small boutique investment bank. And that's a trial by fire. I don't have an MBA, still don't. And so I had to learn quickly or sink. And so the business world was where I wanted to be. One, it's challenging. And two, it was a place where I could use skills that I learned through 27 years of leading Marines. And there isn't, leadership in the military is not about command or giving orders. It's about driving a culture and empowering people to do the right thing and giving them a mission that is bigger than themselves. If you can do that in business, you can succeed. That
is an amazing, you just compiled in 30 seconds what real leadership is. And it's the thing that I keep trying to stress, because most people think leadership is just giving orders, and it's not. You're actually talking about empowering people and driving a culture. That's what real leadership is. And that's, you've summed that up so well. You'll see that written down if you look at my LinkedIn page here.
Well, Chuck, I think one of the most important things is Baron lived it. Baron has done it. So when he makes a decision, and a management decision, it's based upon leadership. It's based upon experience. And I think that's one of the huge things that we try and keep making a point. The military experience and leadership goes way and above what is normally available without the military.
I think you're absolutely right. And to go back to something we talked about in the very first segment, and again, another one of the points you brought up, Baron, you were talking about most of these quote unquote consultants are walking into companies and their kids fresh out of, with their brand new MBA. And I don't care if they got it at Wharton or anywhere else. Doesn't really matter. I have a certificate from Wharton. I make a big deal out of that. But just because Wharton's a great school. But they don't have the experience behind it, and they don't understand how things work.
That's true.
Yeah, Jim's dying to get to this. Okay, we have been informed that we've got to talk flying for the rest of the show. And I am fascinated. I'm fascinated by the business side, and part of it's because I can interpolate. I don't know what the right word is, the flying part. But let's just flip over. Let's just talk about your time in the Marine Corps, and we're gonna lead it off with a lot of people. What's your craziest flying story? I should have set you up for that before the show, so you could have thought about it.
Yeah, real quick. Desert Shield. I'm flying a combat air patrol in the Arabian or Persian Gulf, depending on what side of that equation you're on. And I'm flying with a young lieutenant that was a student of mine when I was an F-18 instructor. And I won't mention his name, so I'll be embarrassed. And we went to the C-130 tanker to get some fuel together, and we came off the tanker, and then Red Crown, which is an Aegis-class cruiser, told us to go covered, which means turn your radio into a scramble so nobody else can hear you. And the voice changed from a young kid to somebody that sounds more like me, and says, and whatever our call sign was, 925, you've got bandits coming at you from the north, multiple targets. You're cleared to fire, weapons free, which means we were on an intercept to shoot down some Iraqi airplanes. And I am going through all the things that are automatic, right? Mass arm on, checking the guns, doing all those things. And young wingman out there is going into combat sputters about 1.5 miles, about 3,000 feet above me. And I switched to the radio that's not scrambled between the two of us. And I said, his call sign was Coma, I'll say that much. Coma, how you doing? And what I heard from Coma was, hoorah, which is the Marine Corps, I'm gung-ho, I'm ready to go. And I'm sweating bullets, about to start a war, and there's a young wingman on my wing, ready to go to combat, just like excited and happy as can be. Now, the rest of the story is the bad guys went away. They didn't want to fight, and we landed. But for just that few minutes, we were close to starting a war with a young guy that had maybe 200 hours in the airplane, maybe less, and just being excited about being there.
Well, Baron,
I love it. That is an awesome story.
Yeah. One of the most interesting things you told me when we were discussing this was you were flying the TA-4, which is a great, we used to call them the Porsches, because they flew as well upside down as they did right side up. That was one of the most, and I had the good grace to be able to fly in the back seat of one of those things for a while. That is a lot of fun, but when you're doing the adversary things, you are doing simulated combat, you probably had some pretty hairy close calls, because when we did it with VA-163, it got hairy once in a while.
Yeah, and just for the audience, the Top Gun, which has become popular with Tom Cruise movies, is not about trophies. It's not about being the best of the best. It's about being the best instructors. They take the most professional, the most mature pilots, most talented pilots, certainly, but they make them instructors. Now, I wasn't any of that. I was just a kid that got a chance to go to Top Gun. But teaching flying, and you're trying to fly your airplane, simulating whatever MiG that is on the training schedule, and the other guy is flying his airplane, and you're talking to him, trying to get him to fly the airplane correctly. There are a lot of close calls. I had a very, very close call in an F-5, later as Lieutenant Colonel out of Yuma, that the measured distance between airplanes was feet, and I mean like inside of 10 feet. That kind of stuff is scary.
Wow.
When the other guy doesn't see you, and you don't know that he doesn't see you, and all of a sudden all you see is rivets, and the flashing lights pass you, that's not much fun. The unfortunate truth is that flying fighters and flying helicopters and flying anything that is performance, that is in combat training, is dangerous in peacetime and certainly in wartime as well.
Yeah, and you go out to Fallon, Nevada, which I did, and it was amazing what my guys were doing and training, and I got to participate in all that. One of the most interesting things, though, sitting in the back seat, you get to live that whole world as an enlisted man, and I love it.
Absolutely. Good for you. That's excellent.
I'm sorry, I keep flashing. Diane's flashing me hand signals over here, and I'm flashing to the remark you made. I flashed to another book, but it's incredibly funny in my mind. But the scene in the Christmas with the Cranks, when Tim Allen is trying to give hand signals to his wife, and he goes, "Come on, that's SEALs." I'm sorry, I'm getting these weird hand signals over here. So
okay.
For our audience, you talked about flying F-5s. Near and dear to my heart because my dad retired from Randolph where all the T-38s are stationed, and it's basically the same aircraft. The black, in the first Top Gun movie, the black with the red star painted on an airplane, that's an F.
Which doesn't exist. That's F5, that's right.
But it's Hollywood, but it's one of the things. The other thing that was interesting I found out, you made the remark, it wasn't about trophies. I found out listening to the interview with the guys who originally did Top Gun, fascinating show how it was made, because at first the Navy didn't want it made, was their greatest recruiting movie ever. There is no trophy at Top Gun.
Nope.
Yeah. I thought that was fascinating.
It's about being an instructor. Yeah, it's about being humble and about teaching and mentoring and coaching. It's not about busting the tower, which you don't do.
No, he would not be flying long.
That would be a definite career ender.
No. But we're back to, and to tie this into what and this is what was triggering me when you were doing the list of things that your firm talked about. It's leadership. It's creating this culture, and you keep coming back to being an instructor, and that's really what it is. These are the guys who train to go back and train their squadrons.
Absolutely. Yep, that's right.
And if you don't know the story, Top Gun was created, and the Air Force has Red Flag, but it's the same concept. During the Vietnam War, we had lost our dogfighting skills because the Air Force, in their infinite wisdom, decided we didn't need guns anymore. So you didn't need to know how to dogfight, and lo and behold, rules of engagements change. And the tie to this is the flexibility. And I'm fascinated. I was an economics major. I've spent 35 years basically effectively consulting with individuals and company about how to, obviously we build retirement plans. But a lot of that comes into just a personal exit strategy. So it does tie together with what you're saying. But where that comes in is you've got to make sure you know what the mission is. What are you trying to accomplish? Why are you getting up every morning? Why are you going to work? Where is this company going? And it's so easy to start having success and lose your way. I think it was one of the most powerful business lessons I got. I was working in a restaurant in college, and it was a small chain that was trying to grow. And we got some new managers that came in because the restaurant was having problems. I said, well, I don't understand. Why are you here? Things are going really well here at the time in San Antonio. And he said, Chuck, remember, success can mask a lot okay. So now let's get back to flying because it's killing Jim not to talk about
One of the points, though, that I want to make with the leadership, not only of the Marine Corps and the military, but in flying, one of the first things that I ever heard was, no matter what happens up there at Fallon, no matter what happens in the air, never quit flying the plane. And I think that's a thing that a lot of people fail to remember. And I got to tell you, I've seen that happen when somebody quits flying the plane and it's deadly.
Yep.
And that's a metaphor for life, as well as attitude equals altitude. So the lessons of flying and the lessons of the military are lessons that can make life successful. Tell you what, we're going to be right back after these words from all of our partners. We've got Baron Lukas, and my wife is dying for me to ask a question about you when we come back. So this is the Veterans Impact Show. Chuck Wright, Colonel Baron Lukas, and Jim Blythe, U.S. Navy. We're here for you. Thank you.
Well said, guys. Well said.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'll tell you after the show, I'll tell you, but you went right to where I'd hoped you were going to go. Never stop flying the airplane. And it does. It's such a simple concept, and I'm absolutely convinced. Baron probably remembers the book, and it came out of an article that Inc. magazine wrote, and I still have the copy in my office. And it featured a Marine who had earned the Medal of Honor on the cover, but it was Leadership Principles of the Marine Corps, and they turned it into a book.
Yeah, great book.
But I think the number one thing that the Marine Corps does, and I think you see this with the 82nd and 101st Airborne and with units like that, with a lot of Navy ships, what's the mission? The Marine Corps is totally focused on the mission. And your comment, mission first, people always, absolutely so true. If we leave business owners with nothing, take that away, because that is really a powerful point. And I love the way sometimes you hear things, and it's not that you don't know the concept, but it's said so simply and so succinctly. So thank you for that. We have thrown, for our Facebook listeners, you can see this, but talk a little bit. How can somebody reach you, Baron? Throw out your, spell your name, because it's spelled a little bit differently.
Yeah, it's really easy, actually. You can go to the ExecHQ.com website, which you guys showed earlier, and I'm obviously there. And you can reach me by email at Baron, BARON .LUKAS at ExecHQ.com, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. One of the things that we should talk about, James, before we close is this thing about flying and never quitting flying. It applies to business in another way, and that's planning and execution. One of the things that I found is that businesses don't know how to plan. And what they do is they may have a plan at the end of the third or fourth quarter tied to budget. And then as soon as the year is over and New Year starts, they put the plan on a shelf and never look at it again. Yep. And then they wonder the next year why they haven't gotten anywhere. That's something that I think is almost pandemic level in small businesses that don't know how to plan, and particularly when the stuff changes, and we are in a very volatile, unpredictable environment right now. You have to be able to plan correctly, and that's one of the things that I teach companies to do. And I think it's critical when stuff hits the fan. How's that? You better have a plan. You better have a backup plan to the plan. If you don't do it right, you'll lose it every time.
Right. Procedure. It's the same thing in flying, because I was going over this yesterday with my son as we were doing some things, because I needed to go up. I'd been a few weeks, and we were talking about procedures and air speed control and aircraft control, and what do you do? And a lot of times people get into that situation that they don't have the procedures, they don't know what to do, and then they don't adapt, they don't improvise, and what happens is they crash. And the first airplane I ever owned was with 3 other guys, and one of the guys didn't have any night experience and got lost over Ardmore, and guess what? My little Grumman Tiger got to be about 12 feet in the ground as a result.
Oh man, sorry about that.
And that was one of the most horrible tapes I ever heard. I heard the tape of his conversation with air traffic control, and he panicked and started screaming, and air traffic control kept saying, never quit flying the plane. Yep. All right, we'll be right back, Facebook, with the terrestrial radio. Welcome back. This is the Veterans Impact Show, and thanks to our great sponsors, Fairway Independent Mortgage and Lone Star Wealth Strategies. Now, let's continue this conversation. Well, this has been an amazing conversation about business, about leadership, about flying, about the Marine Corps, and a little bit about the Navy, because we carry you guys around. So I am so thrilled. Again, Baron Lukas. And Baron, the question my wife asked me, you started to answer it because you said you were an immigrant from Germany. And
I am.
And your name, Lucas, is a German spelling. So when you use the name Baron, are you in fact a Baron?
No, there is some family history that I can't say on the radio, but no, I'm not a Baron. That was we all have call back in the day. This is back in the early '80s. We all had call signs. Remember Maverick and Goose and that gang from the movie Top Gun. Mine is happened to be Baron. I was German, and it fit. I'm not nobility at all. My father was a coal miner, so no. But Baron has been my nom de guerre, so to speak, my war name forever. And it's easier to say than Jürgen, which is my first name. So the only people that call me Jürgen was my father and my ex-wife. My father passed away, so that's about it.
I love that. I wish I could. My call sign was E-Cheese. Anybody who's had a kid should be able to figure out that actually came from Chuck E. Cheese, and is actually one of these days I'll tell that story on the air. But we were literally, well, I'll tell it right now. We were in flight school, and a bunch of us went to, one of our friends was dating a girl, and her kid was having a birthday party at Chuck E. Cheese. And Chuck E. Cheese serves beer. And we showed up because there was beer. And the funny thing was there were 5 or 6 pilots that were there, and we had a little too much fun when we hijacked the helium bottle. I don't have to tell that story beyond it. Anyway, I came back.
I can see that. That's almost like the O Club at QB Point. And the stories I heard
what a wonderful place. Good memories there. Yes, indeed. We won't be telling a couple of those O Club stories on the air. That was an incredible place.
Well, let's go back one more time and give out your website, your email address for ExecHQ, because you are a leader that turns companies around and turns them on to be able to go to the next generation of ownership. So, Baron, let's give that out again. How can people reach you?
The company is called ExecHQ. The website is ExecHQ.com. My email address is Baron, Baron, .Lukas, Baron.Lukas at ExecHQ.com. Happy to talk to you.
And let me tell you, when you call him, say Colonel, because there is
no. Baron is fine. Baron was a long time. Colonel was a long time ago.
Yeah, how come you're not standing in attention and saluting?
Probably should, without a doubt.
He's wearing shorts. He's got ugly legs, probably, right?
Yeah. Well, Baron, let's close our program with a prayer. Lord God, we thank you for protecting our active duty military and first responders around the world who keep us safe and watch over them, whether it's in the sky, the sea, or the land. Thank you, God, for protecting them. Thank you for protecting and watching over our veterans as they lead this nation in business, politics, and in life in general. Thank you, dear God, for all you do for the veteran community. This we pray in your holy name. Amen.
Amen.
Baron, what would you say to a young man or woman who's about to graduate from high school or college about what opportunities you would recommend in the military?
Yeah, I would say, first of all, thank you for thinking about the military. It's an all-volunteer force, and we need you to join. Second thing I would say is study it and learn as much as you can about military history now before you join. Understand what the military is about. It's not about opportunity so much as it is about serving your country. And someday you may have to put your life on the line. Now, having said that, the best thing you can do is get into the military, do the best you can, and learn all you can, because those lessons will take you for the rest of your life.
Amen. I was enlisted. I served with some of the greatest pilots in the world. Chuck, you were an officer, a helicopter pilot. We changed. Our life changed. My life changed when I went through boot camp, and from then on, I think it's one of the most important experiences in the world. So I'm thankful to the military. It made all the difference. So this is Jim Blythe with Chuck Wright, and we've had Baron Lukas, Colonel, United States Marine Corps on. We're so thrilled to have you, Baron. This has been a great day. This is the Veterans Impact Show. I'm Jim Blythe, and we'll be back next week with another great opportunity for you to learn about continuing the mission.
Charlie Mike.
Absolutely. Have a great weekend. And by the way, hook 'em horns. Have a great day.
October is here, fall weather and everything.